Oh, are you waiting for me? I'm actually just waiting for you to bring up Goodreads because you're gonna need it. Hi everyone, my name is Holly, and in today's video I'm going to be talking about 31 book releases that are coming out in July. Now that number was 45, and I really culled it down to 31 for my own sanity. So we're gonna go ahead and immediately jump into these titles because I don't want this video to be a million hours long, and I'm going to be going through these books pretty quickly. So we're actually going to be starting on July 7th, and it's going to be most of this video because there are 16 books releasing on that day. That is one hell of a popular day. I'll let you know when we finally switch dates. Already starting on July 7th, we have Random Shit Flying Through the Air by Jackson Ford. This is the sequel to The Girl Who Could Move Shit With Her Mind. I absolutely love these titles. This is an adult fantasy a bit on the superhero side, resembling X-Men. We're following Tegan, who has telekinetic powers, and the government uses her to go on very chaotic missions, and all she wants to do is live a normal life. But then a body shows up murdered in a way that only Tegan can manage. The sequel continues her story, and I'm guessing things get very electric. Next up we have The Crow Rider. This is yet another sequel. It's a YA fantasy, the first one being The Storm Crow, which is a pretty popular one. I'm sure you've heard about it if you haven't read it yet. It's set in this kingdom where elemental crows are just part of everyday life until one day another kingdom invades and destroys everything, which leads another character to stumble upon a crow egg, which spurs an idea to get revenge. This is a duology, so this sequel is the finale. A Peculiar Peril by Jeff Vandermeer. This is yet another YA fantasy following three friends who are out on a quest to protect the world from a unknowable, terrifying threat. It's following Jonathan, who stands to inherit his grandfather's mansion, which is full of oddities. It kind of reminds me of Laura Croft's mansion. But him and his three friends soon discover some clues that lead to an alt-Earth called Aurora, and this leads to a very deadly pursuit of evil chasing them. This one sounds really unique, and I'm wondering if it has any type of sci-fi in the mix. Up next we have All These Monsters. This is the first book to a YA sci-fi duology that is set in a modern day world that is molded to be like the 1990s. It's following a teenage girl who will do anything to get out of her troubled home, even if that means joining a dangerous monster fighting squad. Perfect for fans of Warcross and Renegades, so yeah, another book with some superhero elements to it. The Princess Will Save You by Sarah Henning. This is a YA fantasy adventure that is inspired by The Princess Bride, following obviously a princess who must save her stable boy true love. So as you can tell, it's going to be very romance heavy, which is definitely not for me, but one of you guys might be interested in it, which is something I always keep in mind when I make these videos. But hey, I do have it on my Kindle, so I mean, I do have that option. Also, this is the same author who wrote The Sea Witch, so that is going to be very interesting. The Book of Dragons by Jonathan Strahan. This is a collection of short stories that I am actually very excited about because not only are the short stories centered around dragons, but some of the authors who have contributed to this book are absolutely phenomenal. So just to name a few, we have Scott Lynch, R.F. Kuang, and Lecky Zhen Cho, Shannon Maguire, K.J. Parker, and many more. I think nearly 30 authors, and this is perfect for fans for fantasy, sci-fi, and fairy tales. Up next, I have Unravel the Dusk by Elizabeth Lim. This is the sequel to Spin the Dawn. It's a magical series steeped in Chinese culture following a girl who must pose as a boy to compete in this competition for the role of Imperial Tailor, and she embarks on this journey where she has to sew 3 dresses, one from the sun, one from the moon, and one from the stars. It sounds really weird when I say what it's about, but I absolutely adore how these covers match. Now, going in a very opposite direction, we have Survivor Song by Paul Tremblay. This is a novel of suspense and terror set in Massachusetts, where a deadly rabies-like virus is sweeping across civilians, and the people who are infected lose their mind and they begin to bite others, and society begins to crumble. It sounds like it's going to be one hell of a page turner. Every Sky a Grave by Jay Posey. So this is a new series that I am personally very excited about. I loved Jay Posey's previous series called The Legends of the Duskwalker, the only series I have ever read in mass market paperback, but he's coming out with a brand new adult sci-fi following a powerful woman who can destroy planets with a single word, but then is suddenly faced with an adversary that threatens the universe. universe. I am here for it all freaking day. Up next we have Ghost Hunter's Daughter. This is a spooky standalone middle grade following a girl who just doesn't believe in ghosts even though her father is a ghost hunter. One day she receives a message that her dad has been taken and he is in grave danger, so she sets off to the place that his dad was last seen, which is a place that is supposedly very haunted. Even though this one sounds horror, it is middle grade, so I expect it to be kind of on the lighter and goofy side. Still on July 7th, by the way, we have Hardwired by Len Vlahos. This is a new sci-fi story about a boy who is more than human. It's following Quinn, who's your typical 15-year-old boy who is actually artificial intelligence, and when he wakes up, his life becomes a nightmare. This is a high-stakes tale that explores the big questions on what it means to be human. And then we have Cinderella is Dead by Kaylin Bayron. This is a retelling of Cinderella, if you couldn't tell by the title, following a group of girls who overthrow a kingdom. It actually takes place 200 years after Cinderella found her prince, and these girls have to attend this annual ball where the men there have to choose a wife. If the girls aren't matched, they are never heard from again. Obviously, this is unacceptable and the girls destroy this social construct. And then I have Burn Our Bodies Down by Rory Power. This is a new YA horror mystery from the same author who wrote Wilder Girls, which is a very hyped book. This is following Margaret, and her mother refuses to tell her any type of detail concerning her lineage. So what does any other character do? They decide to find the answers for themselves, which leads to a lot of trauma and grief in a huge mystery. Up next, The Shadows by Alex North releases. This is a haunting new thriller novel following Paul, who after 25 years returns home to his dementia-addled mother, who is forced to return to a past haunted house in a dying town full of horrible memories. Also a spooky murder. Sounds like a perfect October read. And the final book releasing on July 7th is Night Train by David Quantick. This is a science fiction horror story, and my goodness, if I have ever liked any other genre besides fantasy, it's sci-fi horror. This one sounds so creepy. Okay, so we're following a woman who suddenly wakes up. She's all alone, everything around her is shaking. She gets up and stumbles to the door and realizes that she's on a train carriage full of the dead, which is basically the night train, a driverless locomotive. It sounds so weird and I freaking love it, but I'm really wondering where the sci-fi element is. Is this train in space? Like, is it the Magic School Bus? Okay, so finally moving on to a new date. On July 14th, we have 5 books releasing. And that first one is Wonderland. So this one is described as if Shirley Jackson wrote The Shining. So obviously it's a horror novel following a mother who must protect her family from these unnatural forces while living in this farmhouse. So basically something is lurking within the woods where a dark and deep secret resides. Oddly enough, I really like this cover. It's really eye-catching to me. Raymond E. Feist is releasing yet another book called The Queen of Storms, and this is the sequel to King of Ashes. This is an epic fantasy series called the Fire Maiden Saga, and it's following 2 young men whose decisions will determine the world's destiny. This actually is not connected to all of his other books, so if this is something that you want to read, you can immediately hop onto it. Goodreads and Amazon tells me it's only 2 books, but that just does not seem right. It's Raymond E. Feist. Like, is he capable of writing just a duology? Up next I have When Jackals Storm the Walls, which is the 5th book within the Song of Shattered Sands series, the first book being The 12 Kings of Sharake. That was a lot of words. I hope I got them right. This is an adult fantasy series that is set within a desert landscape following a very strong female character, and if you have been sitting on this series for a while now is the perfect time to delve in. I don't know if this is the finale or not, but they are pretty thick books, and I mean, it's a great world to dive into. And then I have The Fell of Dark by Caleb Roehrig. First off, I love this cover so much. Like, I want a physical copy so bad. It screams like 80s horror movie, and I kind of need it. It's a YA queer fantasy that is also a paranormal romance. It's following August, who lives in a town that is full of supernatural drama when suddenly a hot boy who is a vampire, shows up. August finds himself in the middle of all of that mystery. And the final book releasing on July 14th is Ghostwood Song by Erica Waters. This is a YA fantasy debut, and it's actually described as a hauntingly gay murder mystery that involves a fiddle that calls ghosts from the afterworld. So weird, but it also sounds so cool at the same time, and also this cover is really pretty. Moving on to July 21st, we have 6 books releasing. The first one being Savage Legion by Matt Wallace. This is a new epic fantasy about a utopian city with a dark secret and the underdogs who will expose it. It's female-led with multiple point of views, and it also has a military element to it, and I think it has a really cool cover. Okay, the next book I actually have a physical copy of, and that is Ashes of the Sun by Django Wexler. This is a adult fantasy, but it actually has a bit of Western sci-fi elements to it as well. It's following 2 points of views, and it introduces us to a world that 400 years ago was decimated by 2 major powers, and now the people who are left to survive. Also, just like one of the best covers I have ever seen is screams video game to me, and also the story within is great too. And then the next one I have here is a book I never thought I would talk about, and that is Mallory by Josh Malerman. This is the very abrupt sequel, at least it feels like it, to Bird Box, which I read years ago, and I actually really enjoyed it. I have a very particular memory when it comes to Bird Box. I remember I was at Barnes & Noble and I was in the horror section, and an employee came up to me and started talking to me about this book and how his friend thought it was insanely creepy, and I believe this is about when the book came out. So I got it and read it, and yeah, I have yet to watch the movie because I just don't want to taint like the goodness I have of this book. But yeah, a sequel is coming out that I'll definitely be reading. Up next, I have Trouble the Saints by Alea Dawn Johnson. First off, love this cover. It is so beautiful. This is a adult historical fantasy set within the backdrop of New York City at the dawn of World War II, and it explores the Underground Railroad. The story opens up with Phyllis, who is a young woman who lives in Harlem, New York in the 1930s, who becomes an assassin. And let's be honest, that's all we needed to know. And then we have Shielded by Kaylin Flanders. This is a YA fantasy that I have actually already read and reviewed. It's a very simplistic and charming read. I enjoyed it. I ended up giving it 3 out of 5 stars. It really reminds me of Throne of Glass and Kiss of Deception in a way. It's about a princess who is sent off to a neighboring kingdom to marry the prince, but on their way there, they end up getting ambushed, and that ambush ends up changing her life forever. It's a short and sweet book, and it releases on the 21st. The final book releasing on the 21st is The Year of the Witching by Alexis Henderson. I'm really excited for this one. This is a feminist fantasy debut, first of all. It's following a character who has no idea the type of power that she wields, and she lives in this town that is very religious. But she just can't resist the call of the dark woods, especially when she finds her dead mother's diary. This sounds dark, magical, and full of witchy goodness, and I need it. Okay, so moving on to July 28th, we have 4 books releasing. The first one being Ever Cursed by Corey Ann Haydu. This is a YA fantasy following, you guessed it, a princess. The basic premise of the story is it's about princesses who are cursed by a witch, and they have to go through all sorts of odds to undo it. It's a fairy tale type story, and if you are into that, then be sure to check it out. And then I have The Worst of All Possible Worlds by Alex White. This is the 3rd and final book within the Salvager series. It's a adult sci-fi following a cast of characters who must find this legendary ship before it gets into the wrong hands. It's for fans of The Expanse and Firefly, and a series that I still need to read, and I own books 1 and 2. What am I doing? Another sci-fi that we have here is Chaos Velocity by Megan E. O'Keefe. This is the sequel to Velocity Weapon. It's a adult space opera sci-fi taking place roughly 1500 years in the future. It's following a multiple point of views. If you're looking for a sci-fi that is actual sci-fi in every way possible, then this one's definitely for you. And the final book that I will be talking about in this video, and also releases on the 28th, is A Wicked Magic by Sasha Lawrence. First off, you can never say no to a cover that has a kitty on it. This is a YA paranormal fantasy that is following modern witches who must save teens that are stolen by a ancient demon. I have this on my Kindle, and just speaking that synopsis, it makes me want to read it even more. I'm so curious. Alrighty, so those are all of the July book releases that I am talking about today. I really hope you enjoyed. If you did, give this video a big thumbs up for me because it helps me out so much. Go ahead and subscribe. I upload videos every single week. Follow me on Instagram at Holly Hearts Books and on Twitter at Holly Niece. And until we meet again, happy reading.